So welcome to another on the State of the EVs in the UK interviews 2020. This time with Gill Nowell, who works for a company called Electralink, who provide data on the low voltage network. That's the part of the electricity network which goes to your home, so the 240 volt bit. She also runs a side project, a really useful thing called EVClicks, and is one of the founder members of the Electric Vehicle Association of England. But let's start off with Electralink. Hello, Jill.
Good evening, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well. So people may not know who you are. So you do quite a lot in the electric vehicle world. So I thought we'd just start by talking about your day job, because that's quite interesting in its own right.
Yeah,
So what
sure.
do you do?
Let me try and explain, Gary. So I work for a company called Electralink. I've been there for over 2 years now, and what we do basically underpins the operation of the retail energy market. So we're all about data, energy market data. Okay, so Electralink was set up back in 1998. We're actually owned by the 6 GB distribution network operators. And they set us up sort of over 20 years ago in order to discharge one of their license conditions. That means that we now run, on behalf of the energy industry, the data transfer service. And this data transfer service facilitates all the flows of data that are necessary between energy market participants. So that's all the distribution network operators, the energy suppliers, aggregators, and a few others. So we've got probably about 265 bodies like that use the data transfer service, and it enables all the data flows between those bodies to take place, so that, for example, you and I can switch energy supplier when the mood takes us to do so, when we see a better deal or whatever. But it means that Electralink has access to an incredible amount of energy market data. And a few years ago now, we went through a 2-year process to enable us to have the governance in place to allow us to do stuff, to do really, really interesting stuff with all that data. So my job is to try and identify opportunities to innovate with that energy market data. Just to give you an idea of what actually that data is. So we have the entire switching history of the UK, going back about 8 years now. We have about 96% view of all embedded generation on the energy network by type. We also see where all the smart meters and not so smart meters are being rolled out. So, very often when you hear in the news about the SMETS 2, the smart meter rollout, sometimes that information, that data comes directly from Electralink.
Right.
And in terms of innovation and what we can do, just to give you hopefully quite a good example of that. So last year, on behalf of Western Power Distribution, which is one of the network operators in GB, we undertook a project, an innovation project with them, to see whether, by looking at the changes in domestic energy consumption, we could spot previously unidentified instances of electric cars charging on a particular part of the local electricity network, and also solar panels. So where people have installed solar panels. An electric vehicle charge point installer going out to a domestic property is supposed to notify the network operator. For whatever reason, sometimes this doesn't happen or the process fails. Ultimately, the network operators don't, at the moment, have great visibility of what's connected at the local level. And they need to know what's going on at the local level on the low voltage network in order to be able to plan effectively for network reinforcement. So one of the things that project did was to increase Western Power Distribution's visibility of what was connected to their local network by 13%. So that increased their visibility of both electric vehicle chargers and solar PV by 13%, which is about 15,000 new sort of instances of those that demand on the network.
So that's
demand
really
generation.
Yeah, really important for managing that, isn't it? To
Yeah.
actually know that information. So when you're talking about the low power network, that's sort of like what we'd class as being what's coming into the houses rather than what's going on the power lines, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You hear a lot in the news, as we absolutely should do, about the national grid. And national grid, of course, operate the transmission network. So that's the really, really, really high voltage stuff. The network operators are responsible at the local level, as you say, Gary. So, so the cables, the overhead lines that are the conduit for the electricity that supplies our homes and small businesses.
And they're the people you contact if you say want to up your amount of electricity coming to your house when you're putting a new EV charger in, for example.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, and what got me really interested in that side of things was my previous job. So I was with a company called EVAE Technology for 6 years. And on day 2 in that job, somebody put a piece of paper on my desk and said, right, fill that out. And it was an expression of interest for a pot of funding. And we were successful in securing that funding, and that project became My Electric Avenue.
Right.
Which back in 2012, it ran from 2012 to 2015. That was the first project in the UK to seek to understand the impact of electric cars charging on the local electricity network. And it was one of the first projects to trial a very early demand management, i.e. smart charging technology. And also, really importantly, to understand how customers, so how EV drivers might accept having their charging managed in order to mitigate the impact when you have a street, and then more and more people start to get electric cars. They're coming home, plugging in. We know that not everybody charges at 5 o'clock. However, we didn't know that back in 2012. We thought that's what might happen, And so the behavioural learning from that kind of project was fantastic as well. And of course, as a result of that project and others, we now have government, mandating that all new chargers have to have smart functionality. And a large part of that is to make sure that the local electricity network can facilitate mass uptake of electric cars.
So a lot of people don't actually understand what actually a smart charger means in this case. What actually does that do? So in terms of how that operates, that's communicating back, I guess, to you eventually. Is it in terms of information?
It just means that it has the functionality to enable it to be remotely managed.
Right.
So, for example, and I think Gary, from what I'm seeing, I think that a lot of it will come down to the really exciting new kinds of technology that are out there at the moment. So, if I can just mention OMI, because that's my own personal experience of a smart charging cable.
Yeah, I've used one of those as well. So.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant piece of kit. So I have my app, as I'm sure you do, and I plug my secondhand Nissan Leaf, that's what I drive. I plug my car in every evening when I get home, no matter almost the state of charge, because it's a bit different at the moment, of course, because I'm not driving very far, but normally, and I've scheduled my OMI cable to charge so that when I'm asleep, it charges to say 80% by 7 o'clock every weekday when I get up, or 100% at weekends, and I can opt for it to charge when it's greenest, so when there are most renewables on the energy system, or when it's cheapest. And of course, I'm with Octopus on their agile tariff, and it all, it all syncs very, very cleverly. And ultimately I'm driving for about 1 pence a mile.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Except when it's really, really, really windy and there's so much renewables on the system that then you get paid to charge, which is amazing, isn't it?
And I guess some of that, although obviously that's more the national grid, but some of that must come back to your information as well, that you're able to feed that into the pricing, I guess, in the long term of electricity.
Yeah, sure. We're not so much at Electralink we're all about kind of facilitating the data flows. So we don't get involved in pricing or anything like that.
But your data, but obviously data makes is the information they need to make that for those pricing decisions.
Quite, yes. Yeah.
So, and I love the fact we've now got these agile tariffs, and obviously Octopus is the first real trial of that. But you can certainly see that's the way the industry is going, and has to go if we're going to balance the grid with all the stuff we're putting on it at the moment. It must have been really interesting over the last few months, and with what's happened, obviously with the lockdown and everything, to see all your figures changing, I guess.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And on our website, actually, electralink.co.uk, because there's a lot of information on there, we've seen a definite downturn, obviously, in energy use, and we've tracked all that data. I believe we've seen a downturn in switching, but that's probably coming back up again. But again, on the website, there's an awful lot of commentary, and data around that. So it's all really interesting stuff. And I spotted in the newspaper, online today, that the smart meter rollout will be back up and running again soon. So that's another one to keep an eye on.
Excellent stuff. So let's move on to some of your other side projects. So one of the ones I've always loved you've done is the sign behind you, EVClicks, and the image behind me, which is one of the images on that library. So tell me a bit about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, thanks very much, Gary, for asking that. So in my line of work, I reasonably often, need to source an electric vehicle or electric vehicle charging image, whether it's for a project or presentation or whatever. And I would go online, and there are images out there, but I found them to be very stylized, very professional. And I wanted to find images that were very true to life. So I thought, oh, okay, so why don't I, and I couldn't find anything like that really. So I thought, why don't I do something about it? So I set up a Twitter account for EVClicks, and put out a request to a few, more well-known people in the EV community to start sending images. I set up a website where the online library lives, and it's really taken off. So we now have almost 2,000 EV images on the website EVClicks.co.uk, and the idea behind it really is for those images, they're all freely available to download. So essentially they have been donated to EVClicks for freely available use by anybody to help the transition to zero emission transport, for use by communities, projects, businesses. Government have used some of the images in some schools campaigns. Trade bodies are using them. I know that I know some people who are using them when they go out and do presentations on climate change and so on. So it's really encouraging that actually not only are people donating from all over the globe, that these images are actually being used, which is exactly what I set it up for in the first place.
And I think that's great, and it needed to be there, because I still see images in news articles of EVs which haven't been in production for 5 or 6 years. It's crazy, and they sometimes give a very false impression of what EVs actually are and what's available now. So I think it's a great thing you're doing with that. So if people want to send you an image, how would they do that?
So one of the ways to do it is just to, if you have a Twitter account, then just tweet the photo and tag at EVClicks, and I will pick it up. There is also an email address now, which is evclicks@gmail.com. And you can also go on the website, and you can find all the social media accounts associated with EVClicks on there now. And there's also a page that will tell you how, other ways which you can donate, but probably Twitter or direct by email is the best way, Gary.
Brilliant. So you mentioned you drive a second-hand Leaf. How did you get into EVs yourself? Was it just from the fact you were involved in the industry, or was it? Did you see another car somewhere else? What basically was the story?
Yeah. So I think I've always liked cars a little bit. I remember years and years and years ago going on a track day, and you're driving an E-Type Jag around the track. And that was just exhilarating. And I even got to drive a double-decker bus around a slalom course. And I found, and it took me days to recover from that. I thought it was brilliant. So something has always been there around cars, but it was really getting involved in the EV grid integration projects back in 2012 and onwards that sparked my interest. And I remember my first drive in a Nissan Leaf back in 2012, 2013, and the classic, me sitting there saying, so how do I turn it on? And then the person in the passenger seat saying, it is on, Gill, and thinking, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So, and then putting your foot down, and because zero torque, or 100% torque rather, and it just goes. So, and I've been to so many events, like Fully Charged Live and Cenex LCV, where you actually get to test drive lots of different electric cars, and just totally fell in love with them. Never mind the fact that it's about 40,000 people in the UK die prematurely of diseases related to air pollution, and road transport is a massive contributor to that. So there's all that as well, of course. And then actually buying my Nissan Leaf, it took me quite a number of years because I had the use of a paid for car, so I couldn't justify the outlay until it got written off. Which, so this massive silver lining to my car being written off was, right, there is no excuse now. So I got in contact with Matt Cleveley at Cleveley EV, and he very kindly, over a Christmas and New Year period, found me my Nissan Leaf.
It's funny, but Matt seems to have got mentioned on every interview I've done so far. So he's obviously a very important part of the sphere now. And actually, I was talking to Paul, who runs the EV festivals, in my last interview, and he's in the automotive industry himself, in the second user type market and the spares and parts market. And he was bemoaning how little people there is out there in terms of second-hand sales of EVs, especially around the car supermarkets, and that's something I've noticed. But we're really lucky that we've got people like Cleveley. We've got so many small little businesses running to provide second-hand EVs. Because it's really important. If we're going to have this mass adoption, we've got to have second-hand EVs.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Gary. And Jonathan Porterfield,
of course, yes,
is a definite go-to as well. Brilliant source of advice, and yeah.
Yeah, like Jonathan's great. It really is good. So I think, so that's a key thing. But I think one of the driving factors for that is we need to get cars onto the market, and I think we're certainly seeing this year a change in that market. I think we're probably fast approaching that tipping point we've always talked about for some time. I mean, I started these interviews about 3 years ago, and I was talking to Bobby Lou back then, and sort of we were talking, well, will 2020 be the year? Will it actually be the year we start seeing mass adoption? And we're starting to see the percentages are going up, and we saw for a couple of months this year where the top two cars in the UK were both EVs, which is incredible to see that sort of sell figures. So I think there's definitely something happening now. But do you think that the infrastructure is there to support that at the moment? I mean, you're a little Leaf driver, so you probably don't get impacted quite so much by the problems we CCS drivers have on the services. But is that something you come across, or is it you're aware of?
Certainly aware of it from hearing about it on all the the various sort of social forums and so on. But I'm convinced that charging infrastructure is improving all the time, and of course it's still a big challenge for people who don't have off-street parking to buy an electric car. And this is where the real mix of charging solutions comes in, doesn't it, I think? So not only the kind of the brilliant sort of pop-up charging solutions that we're seeing at the moment, but also charging hubs as well. I think they're going to have a really big part to play in sort of the charging mix. Definitely. I have relatively limited experience of sort of charging when I'm out and about. The ones that I particularly love are on my route, because I live just outside Chester. So when I drive into North Wales, there's some great charging options along the A55 there, thanks to Ongini.
Yeah.
And so on. But and I've used the very well known charges along motorway services and so on, and I've had mixed experience there. It's fair to say. But one of my favourite places to charge is at Chester Zoo, because we've got a beautiful row of Pod Point, and my children always, I think they groan inwardly when we pull up there, because I always have to take a photo.
I'm as equally as bad. I visited, actually on a family trip, I visited the Instavolts at Necton the other week, and I had to stop and take photographs and had a long chat with the engineer, which is really good. But it was great to see those coming online.
Yeah.
It does seem to take an awful long time sometimes for these charges. They pop up and then they seem to take forever to connect to the grid, which is I think sometimes somewhat disappointing to people. Although they're quite good adverts sitting there ready to go online, but the Necton ones seem to take well over a year to actually be connected up, which is a bit frustrating. But you're hopefully going to be in a position to try and help with some of these questions we've been talking about, because you're one of the founder members of a new organisation, if I got this right, the EV Association of England.
Electric Vehicle Association.
Yes, I must put the full electric vehicle in it. Electric Vehicle Association England. No, we've had an EVAE Scotland for some time, but there hasn't been anything equivalent in the UK, in the England side. I keep saying the UK, but in England specifically. So, How did this come about?
So a group of very sort of interested individuals, myself included, came together. It was really started by one of our founding directors, a chap called Alan Cooklin, and Bridget Phelps, and they met each other at a charging point and got chatting, and obviously discovered a sort of a mutual enthusiasm and determination to actually do something useful to support EV uptake and EV drivers in England. They then reached out to Dan Brown, who's one of our other founding board members, who then reached out to myself and a couple of others. So we've been sort of meeting on a weekly basis for quite some time now. And a couple of weeks ago, we were in a position where we'd registered the company. It's a community interest company. We're in a position to launch. One of the things we're very keen to do is and really one of our core principles, Gary, is to offer a voice to EV drivers in England. And one of the things we want to do very early on is to be of use. So the first thing we've done is to launch a survey that you can find at evsurvey.co.uk. Very easy to remember, we hope. And this is to invite either prospective or current EV drivers' views on the government consultation to bring forward the phase-out date of new sales of petrol and diesel cars and vans from 2040 to 2035 or earlier. So it takes between 5 to 8 minutes to fill out, and we've had actually, as of this morning, 525 responses to that survey, which is really quite phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah, having run surveys, at work, then that number is pretty incredible. But what we will do is we hope that there's strength in numbers, essentially. So we will collate those responses. The survey is still open. We will collate those responses, and we will sort of communicate the results to OLEV, to the Office for Low Emission Vehicles, who's running that consultation. And we hope in that way, we'll have a real impact and be able to do something very sort of materially useful on behalf of EV drivers. We've also issued a second survey in the last few days, and that's a prospective EVA England member survey, because we don't want to presume or assume anything on behalf of prospective members to the association. So really we're asking, firstly, is there a need for this kind of association? If there is, would you consider being a member? And then what kind of services could we offer? So, you know, that voice into government, for example, or discounted products and services and so on. And that takes about a minute to fill out. So that's really, really quick. And you can find that on the website.
Excellent. Well, I encourage people to go across there, because the survey, I took the survey myself this morning, so you've got one more number, and it's very straightforward, easy to follow through. So that's really good, and it's good to have that collective voice, because I think there's a lot of us out there who are EV enthusiasts. A lot of us got individual voices. There's quite a few individual manufacturer type EV clubs, so Renault Club particularly noticeable, but all of them out there, MGZS EV Group. The Jaguar I-Pace group I'm part of, but there hasn't been that sort of consolidated voice up to now, I don't think, in England. I mean, obviously Scotland's got that, which has been good, but I think we do need that, and we also do need that routing to government. And I know that some of your board members have got contacts and things which will make that a little bit easier, perhaps, than if I, for example, wanted to go and talk to someone in the DOT or wherever about what's going on. So that's good to see. So how do you see it moving forward? I've obviously talked about membership. That's one good thing, I think. You continuing to have meetings, intending to talk to the government. Basically, where do you see it going?
Yeah, sure. So the surveys, the launch of the association, the website, and the surveys have been sort of the first tranche of activity, Gary. There will be more surveys coming out to support responses to future government consultations. I think there's one on vehicle tax coming out that we'll be looking to get a survey out on. But really, the focus then for the autumn will be setting up the membership structure and opening up the association to members. And in terms of what happens after that, you know, a lot of that will depend on the results of the prospective member survey. You know, we really do. Yeah, we want to be driven as such by the members, by the prospective members. So we make sure that we're doing, you know, we're working for that membership, essentially. And one of the things we're looking to do at the moment as well, Gary, is to secure some funding for the operation of EVA England. And by that, I mean being able to secure resource so that we can employ somebody. So, you know, again, great news in terms of job creation, we hope, but it's exciting times for sure.
Yeah, and I get that totally. I've been involved in associations for other things in the past, and you need that full-time concentration on it, which all the board members are volunteers. You've all got other jobs. It'd be really difficult to get something like this off the ground and actually maintain it, because you've got to be a contact, especially when you're dealing with government. You've got to be contactable all the time. So yes, totally see that. Encourage people to help you out on that. It's been great talking to you, Gill. It really has. I love your enthusiasm. I love what I've seen on Twitter from you. It's really, really good. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on, Gary. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
That was great. I really enjoyed that interview with Gill there. If you've enjoyed this, please like and hit that subscribe button. It really does help build the profile of this channel if you subscribe. And yep, it only takes one click. Anyway, join me next time on another State of the EVs in the UK interviews.